Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks Ignite Minnesota for hosting us and Beth for coming to Red Wing today. My name is Allie Palmer. I'm the Senior Campaign Strategist with Main Street Alliance. We're a national nonprofit that advocates for small businesses. Often decision makers will lump small business in with large business, and the barriers, the challenges, and the opportunities are very different. So we amplify small business stories to decision makers and also the public to highlight what small businesses are going through. We also believe that small businesses are community and civic hubs. They employ their neighbors, they serve their neighbors, they care about what's happening in the community. And we're a great example of how small businesses and large businesses are impacted differently by different policies and different things happen in the economy is tariffs. So we're here to talk about tariffs today. Over the last year, or more than a year now, since the beginning of 2025, there's been a lot of uncertainty and changes in the cost of goods, variability of not knowing how much things are going to cost to come here, and then how do you reckon that with the cost of your product and your profit as well. So I'm really excited to be chatting with Beth today. I have a few questions. We'll kind of have an organic conversation, and then we can definitely open it up to some questions too.
Yeah.
So Beth, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself, your business, and then what's the last year and a half been like?
Okay, so I'm Beth Benike. I think most of you know me. I walked in these doors at Red Wing Ignite in 2018 with an idea of a product for babies. I had cut and glued some stuff together that you could suction down to the table and attach their toys so they can't throw them on the ground. But it was really just a cut and glue together thing, not something you could sell to people. And I didn't know what the next step would be. And Red Wing Ignite was the first place I was able to get pointed in the right direction to figure out what are the steps you need to take to start a business. And from there, I ended up going on Shark Tank, and my business just rose really, really quickly, up to 4.7 million in sales just a few years ago. I mean, just took off. And then I made a bad hire, which is a story for another time. But since we were growing, I thought, gosh, this marketing stuff is like so hard. It's not my expertise. It's taking a long time. I'm going to hire a professional marketing person. And that person, I just said, oh, you're a professional. Here you go. Here's the marketing. And then I went and focused on other things. And 8 months later, realized they had not done a good job. And so then the business was suffering. So then I let that person go, took back over the reins, was just getting the ship turned around. And then the Liberation Day tariffs happened. And that really, really sunk my business because I had 2 containers worth of product ready to leave China 4 days after the tariffs were announced. And there was just no way. I would have had to come up with an extra $260,000 in 30 days to be able to pay that tariff. And when you have that extra expense to add to your product, I would have had to charge my customers 2 to 3 times as much, and they wouldn't have paid it. So long story short, I ran out of products for a few months until the tariffs came down, and then I finally got them in, and now I'm battling the refund process and just trying to stay in business right now. So it's been quite a roller coaster.
Yeah. Speaking of Liberation Day, we saw the narrative of what tariffs were going to promise, bringing manufacturing back to the U.S., but we know at Main Street Alliance that tariffs are taxes, and they are paid by small businesses and the business when it comes through the ports. And then, like you were saying, charging 2 to 3 times more, would have to charge 2 to 3 times more to the consumers. It gets passed on to the consumers. So it's not necessarily economic relief, it is higher costs. And it takes longer than a few months to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. and a lot of things.
Yes.
So could you talk a little, and a lot of things can't be manufactured here at the moment.
Yeah.
So could you talk a little bit about your product and what it would take to bring it to the U.S. and manufacture here?
Yeah. So I am a 10-year Army veteran. There was nothing more I wanted to do than manufacture in the U.S. when I first had my idea. And not only that, I wanted to manufacture in Minnesota. And so I worked with a factory north of the cities for a year and a half in the early days to try to find a way to manufacture here. They really wanted to make it happen. I really want to make it happen. The first obstacle was the raw material. So food grade silicone, it's safe for babies to put in their mouths. We do not source that here in the US. We do source, so it starts out as fancy sand, silica, and they take that fancy sand and they put a lot of energy into it, mix it with some chemicals, and it turns into silica. We do have a huge supply of that fancy sand in the Midwest, and it is used to make commercial grade silicone, which is what we use for our car gaskets and other just rubber parts that don't need to be food safe. The food grade silicone takes a significant amount more energy to make. So, just like we're hearing now with the data centers and how it takes so much water and so much energy to run those buildings, to make the raw material used in things like our kitchen spatulas, baby bottle nipples, any food grade silicone, it's so high that that's why it's done elsewhere. And so the first obstacle was the raw material isn't here. So this factory worked with the U of M to try to work with the chemistry department to make their own version of food grade silicone. It was just not possible. The second barrier that's really relevant to all small businesses is volume. So my products, and I found this out even more in depth this last year when I was trying to find US manufacturing again during the whole tariff saga, I call it. I talked to over a dozen different silicone manufacturers, and these guys are huge and they can order the raw material in massive bulk quantities. So they can at least get it at a lower price overall. But the cost to manufacture in the US, of course, we have higher labor costs, but we also have higher property tax. We have all these different insurances we have to cover as a business. So I have my general product liability insurance. I have all these other insurances for my building, my employees, health benefits. There's so many expenses to have a business in the US. And my products are relatively inexpensive to make. So for each one of my products that they make pennies of profit. So in order to make it worth it for a US manufacturer to produce my products, they would have to produce hundreds of thousands of them so that it's worth it for their business to make a profit. Otherwise, it's not worth their time and energy because they're not going to make much. I don't have that much demand. There's not that many, hundreds of thousands of people. One factory I talked to in Texas just let me know right up front they had a $2 million annual minimum contract, which means I would have had to pay and order at least $2 million worth of product a year for them to even work with me. So that's a huge barrier for small businesses. And it's nothing against US manufacturers. They're also trying to run a business and they have to worry about their bottom line and their employees and their expenses. So it's just something that doesn't work until you're bigger. And an interesting fact I learned out about the tariffs going through this refund process is over 85% of the people who are due tariffs have submitted for them from those illegal IEEPA tariffs. Of all the people who submitted, 85 to 95% of them are classified as US small businesses. So when the initial tariffs were announced and the spring manufacturing back to the US, I looked into that. I have a 10,000 square foot vacant space on my property. And I thought, well, I have this space. What if I just started my own factory? And so I worked with my current factory and got the machine specs and what's the machinery you use to make my products and what's the process. And they were happy to share because they knew it wasn't going to happen. And also I've been with them for 8 years. So we have a very well-nurtured, trusting relationship. But I said, I just want to price it out to see what would it cost me? What would it take me to build my own manufacturing? And it came out to over $2 million for just the equipment. It would probably take over 18 months to get it and get it installed. And then who's going to manage it? Who here in the US has the expertise with that type of equipment to run it? And then the raw material, that's still tariffed. I still have to import that because we don't have that here. So the point of tariffs in the first place is, and tariffs have been in place for decades, and they've been done very strategically. So things that we can, what'd you say? Centuries, yeah. So things that we can and do make in the US, there's a very high tariff on those things coming in from other countries. And that's to discourage us in the US from making it there instead of here. 100% makes sense. But when you just put a tariff on, a lot of people still mistakenly think that the other country pays the tariff. It's not. It's the importer. It's the person bringing it in. So, you have all these small businesses paying these tariffs, but we're not ever going to be able to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. It's like it can't be on us to do it. We just have, and for those people who bring in supplies, like people who are just bringing in material, they have no control over that. They just have to pay the extra, and then for them to stay in business, they just have to pass that charge along to their consumers, whether it's another business or the end user. It is truly a tax. So that's kind of, did I make it? I don't know.
Yeah. No, that
made sense, but
yeah, I appreciate you walking us through that, and it makes me think about. You mentioned a lot of things. You mentioned jobs. If you were able to bring manufacturing into this community, how many jobs you would be able to produce. So why should economic development and local leaders care about tariffs and small businesses when that seems to be an international trade?
Because we're dying. I am, and I will be the first to, you think, I've done over 14 million in sales since I started in 2019. In 2023, 2024, over 4.5 million each year. Massive success. I will be lucky if I hit 2 million this year. Last year was barely 2 million, and this year will not be. And right now, just before you guys all came here, I was working on my cash flow statement of how many more months can I stay in business? And I've been doing that for over a year. Every week, looking at my cash flow statement, what money is coming in, what money's going out, what expenses can I get rid of, what extra revenue can I try to find to bring in. Every week is figuring it out, and it's so hard. And I have a very big network of other moms and dads who invented things. We bonded together in 2019 at a baby fair, and we've all kind of followed each other's journeys. Most of us have gone on Shark Tank now. And, one of my girlfriends in that group, she's like, how much do you think my product really makes a difference in kids' lives? And it's a screen-free meditation device that helps kids with anxiety. It's my autistic son uses it every single night. I was like, why are you asking me this right now? What, are you self-doubting or something? She says, I'm thinking of shutting the business down. It's just too hard. It's just getting too hard. I also run a 3PL out of my warehouse in Zumbrota. 3PL is third-party logistics. So I have two of my other girlfriend brands that send their products to me because they don't have space where they live. One is in New York, one is in Texas. They just don't have, or the desire to have the warehouse and manage it all. I love that part. So I have two friends, products get shipped to me, and then we send out their orders. The one gal makes hair products for babies. She had twins that had really crazy frizzy hair, and so she invented this all natural coconut hair product. She makes all the product in the US. The bottles, however, cannot be made in the US. And so she's always had them made in China. And so when the tariffs happened, she found a place in the US that would make them. And she was going to pay more, but this is what we were going to have to do because these tariffs stayed at 145% for 2 months, and it didn't seem like there was any end. And even still, the administration feels dead set on continuing to implement new tariffs. So she thought, I have to move to the US, and I'm going to have and find a way. And so she found a factory, and it takes time to set up the machinery, to create the molds, to get the designs, to get it all set up, and then they started producing the bottles. So she had all these bottles, thousands and thousands of bottles created, and then she ships those to the factory that makes the goop, I call it, the different gel and creams and whatever. And so the factory that does the goop sends all that to a co-packer, and now the co-packer takes the goop, squirts it in the bottles, and then they wrap it up and ship it to me. Well, as soon as they started putting the goop in the bottles started exploding. And it was mucking up their machines, so they'd have to stop, clean the machine, put a new bottle in. And it just turned out the U.S. manufacturer just didn't create a quality product that would even work for her. Now, she had just gotten expanded in Walmart, a new contract with HEB, which is a huge grocery store chain down in the South. And she's getting these orders coming in, and she has no product to send them. And so she tried with this new manufacturer and tried for a few months, and finally ended up having to go back to her Chinese manufacturer and say, I need to rush order bottles because I have these invoices. Because Walmart doesn't care. You signed a contract with them saying, I'm going to ship you for the next year these products at this price. And you can't change your price just because tariffs go up or down. And so now she's lost her contract with Walmart, and now her US, she had to finish out a contract with this one of these manufacturers, and they put the wrong scent in her formulation. So this coconut baby spray now smells like Bengay. 12,000 units of it. So that's now she's looking for a place to donate it, or she can't sell it. And so we're all struggling in some way or another because what we had in place, and for me, I had 0 tariffs for 6 years. I had a solid supply chain. I had a solid, every few months we'd get a container of product. I knew the payment schedule. I knew my sales were growing. I could count on things. Now with the economy being so icky and people having to pay so much more for gas and groceries and everything else, people aren't spending money. So our shoppers are down, our expenses are up. It's getting harder and harder and harder to run a small business. And you know, big corporations, it's hard for them too. They're all losing a lot of money too. They just have a lot more cushioning than we do. They can let more people go. I was at 5 full-time people, and I ran the business with my brother. My brother has gone back to his old job. We let 2 other people go, one other person go, so it's down to just 3 of us. And now my right-hand woman, my Jill of all trades, has gone to half-time. I'm cutting my pay down to half-time pay just to keep afloat. But it's getting really, really hard. And it's these big policies that we can't do anything about. I mean, other than try to speak up.
There's so many threads I want to pull on, and I just want to thank you so much for this is it's really disheartening to hear that U.S. Innovation comes from small businesses and people taking the chance on themselves and a risk to innovate to create something that can support families. And how have you been staying resilient through all of this, and obviously just taking care of yourself when everything seems to be out of your control?
Yeah. It's an interesting thing that I was in the Army for 10 years. I grew up a really badass, tough woman. And I learned in the Army to adapt and overcome. There's just stuff that happens. You can train and train and train for a mission. When you go to the mission and something happens that you weren't prepared for, you can't just be like, oh shoot, that didn't work. You have to adapt. You have to figure it out. Like when I was in Kuwait and Iraq, I was a broadcast journalist, and I had, video camera, satellite stuff to upload my stuff, and a laptop computer, and I had a very strong weatherproof case. I had gone to Egypt and trained in the sandy environment, and moved into Kuwait before the war in Iraq started. And we were sitting, waiting for this war to start. So we'd sit and throw little rocks at a big rock for hours and see who could hit it more often. You just burn time. And so we went into the mess tent and got lunch. And when we came out, there was this massive wall of black, brownish black, huge wall. We're like, what is that? Because it's desert. It's 110 degrees, blue sky, flatness, just sand for as far as you could see. So when we came out, there's this big brown wall. We're like, what is that? And before we even knew it, we were inside of it. It's called a haboob. And it's essentially a cold front moves through, and it's just when we get those thunderstorm lines that just pop up out of nowhere and zip through. It's just like that, but in the desert. And so it pulls up every bit of sand and silt and swirls, and it was we were being pelted. Every bit of skin, it was like being in a blizzard, but with sand. And we ducked into a Humvee, and then seriously, before we knew it was over, it was just a fast moving thunderstorm. But when we came out, everything was coated in this like silt, orange, dust, sand. It was just weird. It was weird. The whole thing was just like 5 minutes ago it was normal blue, and then now it's just all orange and weird. And so I went to the back of the Humvee, grabbed my case, and opened it up to start documenting this because it was a really just like interesting thing to document for the journey. And inside my weatherproof case, all of my stuff was covered in silt, and that is not good for electronics. So now the war hadn't even started. I was the first embedded journalist in a war zone. My job was there to document the war, and it hadn't even started, and now my equipment is ruined. Like what do you do? I can't just run back to the station and get a new camera. So I ended up getting some canned air from the mechanics, some alcohol wipes from the first aid kits, garbage bags from the kitchen to then wrap my stuff. Every time I would put it in the case and wrap it in garbage bags so that it's extra protected. And I got it working. But the thing is like, doesn't matter how hard I trained, things that are out of our control come out of nowhere, hit us like a ton of bricks, whether it's a scary diagnosis for a family member, 145% tariffs, like things come into our lives that we have no control of, and they come out of nowhere, and we just have to figure it out. And so the way I kind of approach it is I start with like asking for help. I have another little story I'll throw in from a different angle, but like I ask for help from the people around me. Like use the resources around you. Ignite is an amazing resource to use. Like you can come here and say, I have this problem, and maybe they don't solve it, but maybe they point you to the person who does. And then just do the best you can with what you have, like where you're at. Because it's so easy to get wrapped up in like, the world is ending. But like, what can I do right now that's gonna make a difference and get me through today? Gotta come back to that. But you said, when things get really hard, how do you be resilient? What hit me with this business is that year that I did 4.5 million and things were going so great, I was suicidal. And it was not something that I ever thought would happen to me. And it was something that my brain was like, how? Everything is going so great. My brother is working with me in the business is doing well. I was on Shark Tank. I have my 2 little perfect kids. Like how is my brain convincing me out of nowhere, seriously, it came out of nowhere, that my family and the business and everybody would be better off without me here? Like I would wake up the next morning after having these thoughts and be like, what the hell happened? Like, what was that happened yesterday that made me think that? I mean, and it was serious. I increased my life insurance. I had 3 different plans of how I could probably do this where they wouldn't know it was suicide so that my husband and kids would get the money. I mean, it was, and I would have, I finally told my husband and I told my brother, the 2 people closest to me, and they said, oh, quit being a drama queen, because they never would have believed I would have been that way. And so it doesn't always happen when things are hard, like tariffs, or it can happen at any time. And so I think resilience comes from being able to ask for help from the people around you, out loud, actual people. A lot of us are afraid to do that, and I think it's the most important thing to do. Use the resources that are available because they are here. You just have to look for them. Like, how many people still don't know Red Wing Ignite exists? So many people. What do they even do, right? So there's resources that can help, and then the biggest thing for me is just pulling it back down. What can I do with what I got right now? I'll put a pin in that there. Sorry, that was a lot.
I so appreciate your vulnerability and sharing that story with us. And it makes me, connecting it to tariffs and the business, I don't want to ignore what you shared, so thank you for sharing that.
I think a lot of people go through it and nobody talks about it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot more people go through it than you know.
Yeah. 100%. And so in that instance, you're sharing with us because a lot more people are going through it. What has it felt like to share your story related to Busy Baby and your business which you've worked so hard on, you've had great success, and now when everything's out of control, like, you know, you're still sharing your story. What keeps you sharing your, like, why does that matter to you?
In the beginning of this whole tariff saga, I was on the New York Times Daily podcast, which if you haven't heard of that, I hadn't either. I had no idea what it was. They just called. I had the tariff saga started with me having a crybaby video I posted on my personal Facebook. I call it my crybaby video. But I got home from work. I was waiting for the kids to get off the bus, and I got the news that tariffs had gone up, and I had to make a decision, like literally that day, because my stuff was going to get loaded on a cargo ship, and if I didn't cancel it, I was risking having to pay that extra $200,000. People were saying, just send it, just send it. It's so unreasonable. By the time it gets here, it'll be back to normal. Like, this is unsustainable. It's not going to happen. And something was nagging at me saying, don't send it. And so I had to call and cancel the shipment. But I was going to be out of stock soon. So without my products, I have nothing to sell. So how am I going to pay the bills? But if the products come and I have to pay $200,000 for it, I don't have that either. And so I got on, I don't know why, I went on Facebook and I just said, like, what am I supposed to do? And people shared that, and it got shared a lot. And the New York Times called and said, would you do this interview? And I was like, yeah, sure. Like, that's my one thing with entrepreneurship. Well, with anything, I always say yes. I feel like opportunities, situations come into our lives for a reason. And so if there's not a good, valid reason to say no, then we should say yes to everything. And so I said yes. And I did the interview the next day. It was a Friday. And I went about my weekend, and I woke up Monday morning, and there was already like $6,000 in orders on my website on a Monday morning at 6:30 in the morning. I was like, what is happening? And then I opened up my email, and I have emails from Australian news and like all the news agencies wanting to do interviews with me. And so then I found out what the New York Times Daily Podcast is, and it's a worldwide podcast downloaded by 40 million people every day. I had no idea. And so that led to this last year of me doing a lot of media. I'm trying to remember what the original conversation or question was. Why I got into that. Oh, talking about it.
Yeah, being vulnerable about it.
So when I did that, that was a very vulnerable interview. And it was during that interview that I realized, well, there's babies all over the world. Like, if I can't bring my products to the US, maybe I can start selling them elsewhere. And so I have done that. I'm selling now in South Korea is doing really, really well. Australia, a couple other countries are getting started. But I started getting emails from other business owners. And I still get messages and emails from other business owners who are saying, thank you for speaking up for us. Thank you for standing up for us. I'm going through the same thing. My family and friends don't understand. Everybody keeps saying, well, just make it in America. And like, people don't understand how complex and hard that is. And it's definitely not something that can happen overnight. Like, yes, let's make more stuff in America. I agree. But let's get some subsidies or some help to set that up, because we don't have the capabilities to do a lot of that right now. So right now it's honestly just, maybe it's a little cathartic for me too, to vent it out and just like release it. But I get a lot of people who reach out saying, thank you for sharing, because it's like, I feel your pain. I'm going through the same thing. I'm having a hard time deciding to keep my doors open. And so right now, literally right now, the people who have reached out to me, I'm saying, here's what I'm doing. I'm cutting every expense possible. I'm cutting back on my inventory. I'm trying to find the way to shrink down the most to stay in business and survive the storm, because eventually the storm will pass and then we can grow back up. But right now we're like, don't want to go out of business, but we got to shrink down as small as we can to survive. But it's tough.
I mean, absolutely. And I have been talking to a lot of business owners in the past couple of months related to tariffs and the refunds, and not feeling like it's a personal failure is really hard.
Yeah.
It's like the system, all of these different barriers are not working for small businesses.
No.
I'll share a quick story that's related to this, is that there is a small business in Minneapolis that opened 2 years ago. They sell hair products, and medical grade wigs, and they are like, selling to people who have alopecia or are going through cancer treatment, and their wigs are real hair, and the only place that really makes them to the quality that they want is in India. So they were hit with 145% tariffs. Much smaller scale for them that they paid $5,000 in tariffs, but that $5,000 would be so much to them. And the owner just had their own kid and is like, what am I doing wrong? And I was like, you're not doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting, like $5,000 and $50,000 to Walmart isn't that much.
Right.
But to a business owner in Zumbrota that is like trying to build something, that can be everything.
Yeah. But to the regular everybody who buys stuff, Walmart, Costco, Target, they all have their own brands that are being made outside the country. They're getting hit with that, and those prices are going up of your, the generic brand of whatever store you're shopping at.
Yeah.
They're getting hit hard too. They're passing some of that along to the consumers, but they're still taking a hit too.
Yeah.
And they're laying off. My brother works at Dick's Sporting Goods. Like everything there is imported.
Yeah.
They're restructuring their entire organization. He had to let go 2 of his managers because of the way the economy is and the way it's affecting even the large corporations. They're cutting back. I think I just saw one of the vehicle manufacturers is cutting 100,000 jobs. I just saw this morning, Volkswagen. It's affecting all of us, and it doesn't make sense. And so to really get into the just weeds a little bit on tariffs, there was the IEEPA tariffs that the Supreme Court ruled illegal. Everybody's getting refunded for that. Then there are these other sections where the president has executive authority to issue tariffs. Tariffs are supposed to be controlled by Congress, 100% by Congress, because it is a tax. But the president has some loopholes where he can issue executive orders. So he tried to claim the IEEPA tariffs were an emergency response to fentanyl, and obviously that ended up being debunked. Then he put into place these Section 122 tariffs, which now expire in a couple weeks. So if you want to order anything, it'd be a good time because those tariffs are going away July 22nd. That was something he could do temporarily, but after a certain date, Congress has to approve a continuance of that tariff. So I just paid yesterday $9,000 in tariff. I have a container coming next week for these Section 122 tariffs that are going away in 3 weeks.
Shannon. Sorry.
Is that your name?
That's my problem.
Oh, that's so sweet sounding. Then the next set of tariffs that he promised are coming require more work, which is why they didn't go with these tariffs at the beginning. You first have to do an investigation. Pending the results of the investigation, then tariffs can be legally issued. And so the initial findings from that first investigation came out, and it was unfair labor acts. So any country who has forced labor, we can issue tariffs against that country to discourage people from ordering from that country because they have unfair labor practices. Do you know how many countries that this investigative group found have unfair labor practices? All of them. Every country. The UK, the EU, China, India. Every single country has unfair labor practices. So starting after they go through the next steps of this, if they get it approved, there will be an additional tariff of 10 to 12.5% on every country. Now that's not what tariffs were designed to do. Tariffs were designed to discourage buying things from countries where we could make it here ourselves. It's not supporting global economy. It makes no sense. But okay, I'm gonna get off that stuff.
No. Yeah, I mean that's important to share is like what are they designed to do?
Yeah,
and
what is the point of these things? And
Right.
what is it accomplishing for us? If it was accomplishing something for us, benefiting our country, make that clear and we'll support it. And we'll find a way to work with and around it. But with the constant ever changing, so for a product-based company, which I have, you're getting materials. Everything as part of my business plan starts with my cost. What does it cost me to make my widget? And from there, you have to add in your insurance, add in your marketing, add in your other expenses, and how much can I charge the customer? Or how much will the customer be willing to pay? And if you don't have this solid number to know what your initial costs are to begin with, it changes this formula of everything else. Every single time it changes. So when you're looking at, well, I need to get this thread and this padding and this, and then that price changes and it changes again, and now like, do you change your prices? Well, it might go down. I don't want to raise my prices, and then people now, like, you know, companies getting tariff refunds, now Americans want refunds because anybody who raised their prices, now they want their money back. Well, it's like, it's just so much uncertainty in everyone's world. That how do you plan? How do you plan to move forward with your business?
Which is so important for business.
And you don't know your base cost.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what time it is.
So,
10 minutes,
Oh,
15
we're doing
minutes.
good? Okay. Coming back to a little bit, because I'm thinking about you sharing your story, and we were talking before this that postcards just went out with your face on it everywhere. Do you have any advice or hopes for other business owners who are, like, could they speak out, and would that be helpful, and where would they start to do that?
gosh. You know, before all of this, I was not a political person in any way whatsoever. And I paid attention to my children and my business. And I watched one TV show that was CBS Sunday Morning every Sunday. And that's all I consumed. I didn't consume any news. I didn't consume social media. I have somebody who posts on social for me, so I don't have to be on there. And since this all happened, and in politics, I didn't follow politics at all. And when this happened, and everybody said, "You voted for Trump, you deserve it." Like, first of all, no, I didn't. I did not. But nobody deserves it. Nobody deserves this. But I realized how much these policy, like, I went to the State of the State at the Capitol in Minnesota last year, and then I also went and spoke in front of a committee. I can't remember if it was a small business committee, and I gave my testimony of my story. And one of the people sitting on that committee, an elected official, a representative for us in Congress, said, "Well, we all know the other country pays the tariffs and they're a good thing. I don't know why we're having this conversation." This was somebody in representing us at the next level, clearly uneducated. So I took great joy in educating him as properly as I could. People who know me know I'm a little unfiltered sometimes. But I called him out and I said, actually, no, that's not how tariffs work. But if we don't have people at the lowest levels carrying things up to the next level who understand the pain and the process and the way things actually work in real life. So for me, it's just like trying to support Jake Johnson, because when the tariffs came out, I reached out to Brad Vinson's office right away. He's my representative, and he actually supports or is on the committee for veterans, farmers. My husband's a crop farmer, and small businesses. And so I reached out to his office right away, left a message, sent an email, got a form letter back, and Jake Johnson, who I had no idea who he was, just swung by. We were doing a news thing at my warehouse, and he stopped by and he introduced himself, and he said, "I'm Jake Johnson. I don't think he was officially running for the position yet. He said, think about running for this position. I just want to understand this." He says, I'm a teacher. I'm a math teacher, and I want to understand, like, what's happening. And so I feel like he's somebody who is what I want representing me. With the current representative, I went to his office in DC twice and tried to talk to him. And then help me understand, Vincent was asked directly about my business on the KAL News, and he talked around it, didn't answer the question. And so I called his office and I said, "This doesn't have to be a media thing. Like, can you just have him give me a call and help me understand?" Because what he said is it's short-term pain for long-term gain. Help me understand how much of this short-term pain I'm supposed to take, how I'm supposed to survive it, what would you have me do? Help me understand it, because right now I'm feeling very unsupported not even personally attacked because I know I'm not important enough for them to actually attack me, but I'm being affected and nobody cares. And so I think we have to start with our lowest levels of representation and advocate for ourselves and advocate at every level we possibly can, because I think still so many people are uneducated or uninformed of how we're impacted as communities and businesses with a lot of policies.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like starting with your vulnerability by going on Facebook has really spurred this conversation that you're just sharing your story, and you would love to understand, like, if this is going to be better for my community and my business, help me understand why and how and when. Yeah, so I just thank you again for sharing your story and advocating for not only your business and your community, but it just has ripple effects to other businesses, people who are going through the same thing, as you know, receiving messages. Yeah.
It's hard because you feel like your voice doesn't make a difference. Because I'm just one person. I always said, like, I'm just one vote. I'm just one person. My voice is not going to make a difference. And so I used to not vote at all. And I would say I fought 10 years for my country, and I have the right to not vote because I don't want to vote unless I know what I'm voting for. And I didn't have the time or interest to look into the politics and the people I was voting for. So I'd rather not vote than vote for somebody I didn't know what I was voting for. And now I see that the votes do matter and our voices do matter. And Minnesota, I think, showed quite clearly in the last year how when we bring our voices together, we can really make a big difference. It's just we have to start coming out and doing it, which is, for me, very hard and awkward and uncomfortable. But
I think to add to that too, remembering that our representatives work for us, and so they should be asking you questions and asking me questions about how our day to day. And so bringing that with us, outside of an election, but just always, like, we have more than a vote, we also have a voice. Thank you again so much. And if there's any questions.
yeah, do you guys want to talk specifically about any of the things you're unclear about? I know you want to maybe talk about DDP, like ways of importing DDP versus regular shipments or anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think like you, right? It's hard when you're wearing all the hats. And so I've handed off my, importing stuff to a freight forwarder that I've worked with from day one, and, everything seems fine or whatever, but I'm kind of in the dark about it, honestly.
Well, when you're shipping DDP, it's good to be in the dark because it is a gray area. So leave that between the forwarder and the factory. But the way tariffs work is when a product is produced or a material is shipped from China, you have a commercial invoice that goes with the shipment. And the commercial invoice says, this is the value of the shipment, and here's the category of good it is. Within the tariff world, there's this thing called HTS, Harmonized Tariff something. And it's a long list of various products, materials, and they all have a code. And so it's really a difficult thing to do to figure out, well, which code do I use? Because you have to pick one code that matches what you're shipping in, so that on the commercial invoice, you have this code, this value, and then when it comes in, once it hits US waters, you get assessed your tariff and duty. And pre-Liberation Day, tariffs were assigned, it might be 10% for this metal that we do have in the US, but it's not super readily available. And then it's 45% for this other aspect of what you shipped in, because we do have that in the US. So it's a really complicated system. It's on purpose because you tariff things based on, strategy, whether we have it or don't have it here in the US. These blanket tariffs are quite unusual because it's just literally 10% on everything. Or like I played last summer, 30% of everything. So it doesn't really stimulate any kind of motivation. Even paying 30%, it's still cheaper for me to just make it in China and pay the 30% because it will cost me 150% more to make it here. So when you ship things in, it gets to the port. It gets to, like, my products got to Seattle 2 days ago. They send me a commercial a customs and duty invoice, and it outlines you're paying, here's the value of your products, here's the percent or tariff applied, here's the total, plus, little they nickel and dime you on a bunch of other stuff. I have to pay that before they'll release it to go. When you ship something DDP, so that's all tied to me. So if I ever get audited, they take that, they can trace back how much I paid, how much my stuff costs, how much it's all tracked. When you ship DDP, the factory puts a price on it that's usually significantly lower than the actual price. And the forwarder owns that product, owns it, is responsible for it, is the one importing it. So the freight forwarder is taking on the risk of, one, if it falls off the ship and goes in the sea or gets pulled, they do random checks on every container, you'll get stuff pulled, and if it doesn't jive, whoever's the importer of record is the one that's gonna get busted. So when that freight forwarder makes that deal with the factory of here's the amount of cost and here's what the categories are, when it gets to the border, that freight forwarder pays that, and then it releases, they ship it to you, and you just pay whatever their cost was. And you don't actually know how much of it was the freight, like the actual cost to be on the boat, and transport it, versus how much was the duty or the taxes. It's just like, here's one bill for you. We did a service. We brought your product to the US and it cost $5,000.
Yeah.
So you don't get a refund, but you also would have probably paid a lot more had you shipped it the other way.
Have
So-
you done anything with AGL, Amazon Global Logistics?
We did send, back in the heyday, when we were selling like crazy, we sent a whole container AGL from our China warehouse to Amazon. Now they have gone, they used to only do containers, now they've gone down.
Mhm.
And I know people doing it, and it's okay.
Yeah, I'm
It's-
curious to explore that, but I've been so happy with
Yeah,
the person that I've been using, and I'll compare, prices on Freightos or whatever, and they seem like they're in line with it, so.
yeah, Amazon's a love hate for me, but Amazon knows what they're doing. And they have the size and networks to do it well and efficiently. They still nickel and dime you and bleed you of every extra cent you have.
I get it.
But-
half of whatever something sells for as a small business
Yeah.
on Amazon, you're only getting about half of it.
Yeah, they take 43.5% now because they just added a fuel surcharge last month. So 43.5% of every order of mine goes to Amazon.
Yeah.
Plus advertising and stuff on top
That's
of
why
it.
I'm saying like 50%
Yeah.
when you throw in the advertising.
Yep.
What would you say on the other side of the coin? There's two sides of every coin.
Yeah.
And obviously you've been terribly hit by the tariffs, but who does the tariffs benefit?
There are some people that they must benefit. And you would think it would be U.S. manufacturers.
Farmers?
Farmers are terribly hurt by it.
No, a lot of farmers are happy about it because they can now export their product and not have the tariffs on them. So it's export and import is the difference.
So my husband's a farmer, so we've been doing corn and soybeans. We sell our crops, and I think most small farmers, so maybe it's bigger farmers that are happy, we sell our crops to the local elevator or to the river in Winona. We're not personally exporting it to any other country. We only get paid whatever the price is they're paying at wherever we're taking it plus the basis. And so they're not seeing good prices at all. But the really big hurt for the farmers, at least in my life, are the input costs because of the tariffs on the critical inputs, fertilizer, things they need to actually grow the crops. And the part that farmers are small businesses too. I mean, they're big small businesses, but they're run by small teams, and they have to, just like regular businesses, plan a year in advance. And so they go to the bank with their cash flow and their plan and their number of acres and the amount of crops the expected yield based on their fertilizer plan, based on their past year's experience. And they're coming up with to the bank, here's our plan, here's what we think we're gonna do, here's our projected input costs, here's our projected yield based on our fertilizer, our agronomy. the bank grants them a operating loan. Here's the money to be able to buy your seed, buy your fertilizer, and then when you harvest or when you cash in your crops, you pay back your operating loan. So we went into the bank with our plan and got the money to buy the products, and then the cost of fertilizer tripled. And now our plan that we gave the bank is null and like, and
Just
so
looking at
the
the
uncertainty.
businesses that produce products here
Mhm.
that were cut out because of the cheap prices that were overseas. So they no longer have their businesses. So I mean, the tariffs came into play way early in our country,
yeah,
and then income taxes came in. So tariffs were used to pay, right, for goods and services that would be consumed at a lesser price. But then income taxes came in and they reduced the tariffs. So I mean, it is this whole global versus the US manufacturing is where I think a lot of it is. And it's looking at it from both sides. I mean,
Yeah, the manufacturers I know personally have struggled because the cost of the raw material, again, a lot of the raw materials we make, like our US manufacturers use to make products, is imported. So now the raw material costs have gone up. A lot of the metal workers that I know have lost bids to Canadian companies now because of the cost of the metal. And when you look at the size of our manufacturing industry in the US versus the size of our consumer, like we should get back to more manufacturing, but it's such a tiny part of our economy and our country and what we do. The impact of the entire population of all of our prices going up because of all of the swirl of things happening, but tariffs being a huge prompt for increasing costs of everything.
but intellectual property too. I mean, that's huge. What people, they get knockoffs, right?
I have 15 patents. There are knockoffs of my products, and tariffs have not affected them in any way. They're still here, they're still coming, because the knockoffs are made with, so especially with silicone, they're made with less quality silicone, because I have high standards, and they're bringing them in at very low cost. So the tariff, because I'm honest and running an honest American business and following all the rules, I'm paying a lot more in tariffs because I have to put that proper value in there. These knockoff companies don't give a shit. So they're saying, yeah, these mats are worth 30 cents each. And they're getting them imported and they're paying the teeniest tiny fraction. They're still coming in. They're coming in even more now. So now I'm suffering even more because there's more of the mat knockoffs on Amazon now because it's cheaper for them than it is for me. I can't keep them stocked. I've been out of stock of my original Busy Baby mat for 2 months on Amazon. Like I have my container coming next week. But in that time, now the market share is completely taken by these knockoffs. And there's literally nothing I can do. Tariffs are not stopping knockoffs in any way.
Yeah, I think this whole conversation is like tariffs.
I wish they would work on
Right,
knockoffs.
like it is one tool or thought towards addressing a bigger issue, and there's so many other layers that aren't being addressed.
Yeah.
Um,
The knockoff issue needs to be addressed by the USPTO, and if you guys do anything on that, I will be happily participate in that because it's the United States Patent and Trade Office that needs to be doing something about the knockoffs.
Yeah.
Entering the country.
Yeah. So it's like all of it, small businesses in America and all the barriers and challenges is complex. There's a lot of different layers, and you're speaking to, at the moment, I mean, you could talk, like you said, to all the different things, but at the moment, speaking to how tariffs are impacting your business right now.
Yeah.
And we can talk about all the different other layers and how we can address that
Yeah.
through policy and consumer awareness. But yeah, right. It's just, there's so many things to pick apart.
Yeah.
It can be overwhelming, I'm sure. I mean, I know it is. But
Just running a business is overwhelming.
yeah.
Yes, sir, in the back.
I'm curious, Beth, in your experience over the last, I guess, 15 months maybe?
Yeah.
Because it started last April or just before that. What's your advice to other small entrepreneurs who are trying to either start or run a small business in terms of trying to influence policy? Because, I mean, your experience, I think, that you talked about in, first of all, navigating the difficult complexity now, it seems, about getting the attention of our representatives at whatever level you want. And the environment has changed where now it seems like the vast majority of people holding office are in either one camp or on the other camp at the ends of the spectrum. And they aren't really interested, it seems like, in hearing actual solutions. What they want is another talking point for their next election.
Yeah.
And then you talk about the complexity of what you just described, whether it's understanding, how you're importing makes a difference in cost, and how, you talk about stuff I had no idea about, GDP, whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, and I feel like I'm sort of in tune with business issues. This is all foreign language to me. How do small entrepreneurs, small business owners navigate that and try to influence policy when they, I mean, most of us in business don't want to be political.
No.
But we want good policies for business and economic growth. And how do you navigate that in trying to influence policy? And, so the response to your comment about, well, Jake Johnson is hearing my voice, so I'm going to vote for him and I'm supporting him. So, that's a Democrat, and that's not where you want to be.
I'm
So
definitely not a Democrat or a Republican, but
Yeah.
I'm going to support people that make sense to me.
So how do you advise other small business owners or entrepreneurs who are seeking to run a good business to navigate this and influence public policy?
Yeah, I think fortunately organizations like Main Street Alliance, and there's a handful of organizations that do similar things. There's another one called We Pay the Tariffs that kind of like really focuses on that area. You guys cover a lot more areas of small business. There's organizations out there that just ask, and you can probably say this better. They just ask, like, get in our directory so that if there's ever an opportunity where we can have you travel to DC with us or give a testimony, I don't want to be part of it. I don't want to do any of it, but I will. But I'm not going to watch for opportunities. So if I just get kind of like registered with them, let them know. I mean, it was like a 2-minute thing. I just created a video and like typed in for 2 minutes a little bit about my business. And then these guys focus on advocating for small businesses and policies. And when something comes up, they can access their database to see what businesses do we know who would potentially join us in this, in whatever way can be most helpful. That way the pressure's off me to pay attention because I need to focus on my business. I can't, I want to help affect policy, but I definitely can't come up with the solutions. I'm trying to solve my own business problems.
Right.
I'm not gonna watch for it. I can't even watch the news because it just puts me in a funk.
Mhm.
So let these guys handle it, and then they know I exist and I'm willing to stand up and share my experience. And I think that's the best thing we can do as small business owners is just get in your directories and
Yeah, I mean, thank you for the plug with Main Street Alliance. That is exactly, we're looking to connect with small businesses, and I'm trying to be a resource navigator for small businesses to connect them with other small businesses, but also what's available in Minnesota, like Ignite Minnesota. And then also operate like a press team of like, okay, do you have a story that you want to share and that people need to pay attention to so we can amplify that. Also connecting them with elected officials so that they can share their story. We'll try to connect them with elected officials. Bringing them out to DC. Bringing them to St. Paul and talking about small business issues and doing it in a way, understanding the capacity of small businesses, because you're trying to run a business. If you wanted to be a politician, you would be a politician. So what are like the different asks? The different asks that we can have with small businesses, such as signing a petition, or there's opportunity if it makes sense to be on a lawsuit. We can have you be a plaintiff on a lawsuit, or connecting you with different organizations who are doing ads for different things to share your story. So, yes, I know we're over time, Thank you again for sharing your story.
And I got about 10 more minutes to chit chat if anybody wants to chit chat. We can chit chat.
I'll also add, you probably know, we have a coalition for new trade with Main Street Alliance. Ambassador Catherine Tai, who used to be the former trade envoy with the Biden administration, she is now working on kind of what we were talking about of like, there is, you know, positives to some of the trade agreements and there's also negatives, and we need to navigate what this conversation looks like differently other than just black and white. Like there's a lot of gray areas, so having those conversations with small businesses, with farmers, involved.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah. I hope it's helpful. I mean,
Super
I
helpful.
know I can't believe how much knowledge I've gained in the last 15 months. I didn't know anything about any of this because I never had to pay a tariff ever. And then all of a sudden I had to figure out what they were and how to factor it into my business model, and well, what if it changes again and then again and then again and then now it's illegal and now it's not, now there's new ones coming. It's like,
Okay, that's one question I do have, like hindsight. Is there something that you would have told yourself 3 years ago? Like, how could you have better prepared?
you couldn't, like that 145, that
Like,
liberation
that's
day,
just
that was
so
that thing
outrageous.
just came out of nowhere.
That's the wall of sand
and
and
hit me like a wall of sand and left everything totally different, and you just have to figure out how to navigate it. Like that, I think there's business decisions I would have made differently just to give myself a little more cushion.
Yeah.
You know, back when I had extra profit coming in, I wish I would have like put more of that in a safekeeping versus like, wow, I have a lot of extra money in the bank. Let's go try and make this super fancy social media video that'll go viral and we'll spend thousands of dollars on. Because why not? There's money in the bank.
Right.
Like I should have probably created a little nest egg for the business before, but everything was going so well for so long that I just like never felt like it would go bad.
Yeah.
But then it did. Now we're gonna fight back.
Yeah.
Get back up there again.
Yeah.